Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, this is a channel about Dungeons and Dragons where we try and take a darker tone with everything we do here. So if you like edgier kind of content, definitely hit that like and subscribe button. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. And if you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, the link is in the description, as well as a link to our game that we are a part of over at Critical Failures. Check us out there Wednesday nights about 9:30, and definitely catch up and see some of the awesome stuff we get ourselves into. With all that out of the way, we're going to talk about the Astral Elves. So we're finishing out our run through about discussing the elves. Now the Astral Elves are in Spelljammer, which is more of like a futuristic kind of spacey campaign setting, which is really interesting and pretty cool. There's a lot of cool unique rules to just that world, especially with how oxygen works. And there's definitely a lot of weird creatures like the Thrycreen or the Gith that are out there. And the Gith Yankee and the Githzerai are both out there as well. It takes place a lot in the Astral Sea. And to understand a little bit about that, the Astral Sea is timeless. It's kind of like this void that it exists, but even though you can take actions and move forward and build and create, time itself doesn't move forward. And so however you felt when you entered the Astral Sea is how you feel the entire time. So you want to basically eat and feel rested, so that way you can constantly feel rested out there. You don't need to sleep, you don't need to eat, because your body is caught in that like almost time stasis where you don't feel hungry, you don't feel exhausted or whatever it is, as long as that's how you felt when you entered it. The best example of the kind of things you can do in the Astral Sea is kind of what the Gith Yankee and the Githzerai do, where you're born in the normal world, and then you raise up till you're about like a teenager, and then you get brought to the Astral Sea. In the Astral Sea, you're taught how to fight, your history, the way the world works, your war with the mind flayers, and how that whole schematic exists. Your deal with the with Tiamat and the Red Dragons, if you're Githyankai. It's the perfect place to hone a craft and master something, and then come back to the regular world and be able to use that knowledge. If you were a wizard that went up there when you were 19, you came back 19 and 1 minute year older, and you could have spent billions of years learning magic, and value and growing your own power. It's almost like this wonderful idea of like the perfect opportunity to evolve yourself and then come back and be better prepared for whatever circumstance you're in. It is not easy to get to, and it is kind of dangerous out there. There's a lot of enemies existing. Dead gods usually kind of permeate the entire surroundings out there. It is a very strange place. But naturally, elves have found their way there because they wanted to be closer to their gods, so rather than stay towards the Feywild, they decided to enter the Astral Sea. Now, these elves have this unique kind of perspective of time, because normal elves live to be about 700 whatever years old. Astral elves can live beyond that because of so many years they could spend in the Astral Sea that they might not even know passed. In the Feywild, time passed differently. You don't realize years and years have gone on because you're kind of caught in this perpetual party. The Astral Sea, everything is kind of the same. So you don't know how much time has passed because there's no way to measure time that isn't moving. So it's really unique how little time is important to the Astral Elves because of the normal longevity outside of the Astral Sea and the compound duration of years they can manifest from spending countless decades in or centuries in the Astral Sea that don't count towards their 750 normal lifespan. The Astral Elf is a lot like the other elves that we've seen. You know, you have the extended long life, you have the Fey ancestry, you have dark vision, and you have proficiency in the perception skill with keen senses. The Astral Elf does have a couple of other cool tricks with it. First and foremost, they get an astral fire. You know, one of the following cantrips of your choice: dancing lights, light, or sacred flame. Intelligence, wisdom, or charisma is your spellcasting ability for it. You choose this when you select this race, which is great. Sacred flame is really, really useful as it's radiant damage, and as a cantrip, it's a pretty effective scaling. So it's definitely worth to pick up, no matter what. If you're like a Gish or any kind of magic hybrid or just a regular spellcasting class, it's a great addition to your repertoire. No matter what campaign you're in, it's always good to have a couple of different options, and especially something that does radiant damage. You also gain Starlight Step. As a bonus action, you magically teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space. You can use this trait a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. Now, this is a lot like the Eladrin, the Shadar-kai, where you get that elven teleport ability, which is something that I guess is going to be kind of a staple going forward. But I can't imagine there are that many other types of elves in existence. But this definitely trips up a lot of the other kinds of elves. Just because, A, it gives you a cantrip, which is like the high elf, and that teleportation is very, very beneficial. Even if you were any like wood elf or anything else from the player's handbook, having that is just a big utility thing that you get a lot of uses out of. And then you get Astral Trance, which is, again, the elven ability where you don't go to sleep. You kind of finish a long rest in 4 hours, just kind of meditating your way through. But you remain consciousness, so if you are in a situation where you guys are resting, you can take watch and not have to worry too much about everyone else getting their rest in. So Astral Elves is I guess it's kind of a fantasy necessity because it is a fantasy setting. Even though you are kind of in space, that you would have elves populated and around. That being said, elves in D&D tend to have this way of absorbing the world around them. The Eladrin in the Feywild change with the seasons because of the incredible amount of magic that just permeates there. The Shadar-kai have this look of just decay because they exist in the Shadowfell predominantly. And when they come to the material plane, it's almost like a facade that they have because they're just clearly not representing who they really are. Where they're like in the normal world, they look rejuvenated, youthful, and beautiful. And when they ever do anything that involves the Shadowfell, you see them as these ugly, kind of almost withered away people, which I love. But and the Drow live in the Underdark, and as a result, they have like onyx skin, and they have like these bright white hair, so that way they can kind of be almost kind of like the anglerfish, where like it just kind of draws attention in and then like destroys what's around. It's unique because it's all very reflective of the kind of the environments they grew up in, and the kind of world that they're in. Now, Drow were cursed, kind of, I guess you could say. It was a result of a magical spell that ended up causing them to be unable to be in the sunlight, and that's what drove them into the Underdark. And I guess as a defensive mechanism and evolution, they became the way they are. And definitely through the machinations of Lolth's interference with them, specifically because she had a very big part in cultivating them into what they are, which is why they are just so gnarly. They are a force to be reckoned with. They're all like super soldiers. It's amazing, and definitely something I'm going to cover pretty soon when I do another lore video. But I digress. because of the effects of the world around them and the way elves react to it, in the astral sea, they do end up with this divine touch to them, which is why they get sacred flame, and why they get light and have this connection to it. And it's because in the astral sea, in the astral plane, they kind of brought themselves there to be closer to their gods and their deities, and as a result of that, they kind of just evolved with this little investiture of divine essence to them, and that's a cool little concept, because now you can kind of work elves into ways you don't normally see them. Like, I always see elves like roguish characters, rangers, even paladins. I could see it kind of happening. Archers, arcane archers, fighters, things like that. Sorcerers, wizards, those kinds of fit really, really well into what an elf is in my mind. But I never really think of them as clerics or even really warlocks. And this gives you that kind of essence where that would be almost appropriate, because your whole purpose is to be kind of closer to your deities, and reflecting that and being devout is a unique way to kind of ensure that your journey had a purpose. You know what I mean? Especially to take so many of your people to run out into there basically on a whim is one of those things that really rewards that blind faith, that belief that what you're doing is right and that everything's going to be okay. And it's reflective in like clerics and the way kind of religion works theoretically. So having elves see that and elves do that is really unique, especially because of the D&D lore behind elves. They're very aloof. They're very kind of whimsical. They kind of just do whatever they're really interested in the moment, because their life is kind of about just gaining all these experiences. So when you go back to Corellian or whatever, you have all these joyous memories and you get to relive them and play them out constantly. That's kind of the reward of your trance, is you get to relive these great moments, and forcing yourself into a very rigid kind of environment and lifestyle really steps away from that, which is an interesting concept. So I don't know exactly what deities they're kind of really searching for, because they always had such a close connection to Corellian, which is right there. So the Astral Elves are actually really strong and give you a unique way to kind of put another story on being an elf, where you can be a little bit more rigid, where you can have a little bit more of a religious purpose, or like being on a pilgrimage, or some sort of thing that separates you from this kind of being aloof and just like, oh, I'm here just because, and give your character a little bit more of a defining kind of a purpose, which I think is great. On top of it, elves are strong, and on top of that, you get that fancy elven teleport, which really buffs you up a lot offensively and defensively. It's a great utility spell. All that being said and done, we're going to bring this video to a close. Thank you so much if you made it this far. Definitely hit that like and subscribe button. Definitely check us out on Patreon. The link is in the description, as well as a link to Critical Failures, a game that we're a part of where we live stream a D&D campaign. We're doing Icewind Dale right now. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Definitely check it out. And thank you for giving a spooky kid a chance.